After defeating 2 world wars and being stripped of everything, in the beginning of the 1960s, the designers and engineers at Mercedes-Benz Stuttgart came up with a car that became the favourite of royalty, heads of state, world leaders and dictators alike. A car that was so over-engineered, beautiful and so futuristic in design, it would blow everything in existence out of the park for years to come. The Mercedes-Benz 600 limousine. They came up with a car so expensive and so luxurious, it became irresistible for the affluent big hitters at the time. Kings and Queens owned one. George Harrison owned one. Saddam Hussein owned one. David Bowie owned one. Elton John owned one. But I owned 3. But unintentionally. You see, many people are afraid of this car, but I just fell in love with their over-engineered, innovative design. The cars arrived from different places and in various states of disrepair. This one, in 1971, originated from South Africa. It was in a kind of browny grey metallic over red parchment. It had all the bits like its own refrigerator and a special air conditioning ventilation system designed to protect its passengers amidst germ warfare. I know these cars were never two the same, but the extremes the owners went to were just off the charts. Out of these, this was by far the most original of the bunch, carrying its original engine, and although rough in appearance, it was absolutely solid, probably due to its hot climate. The next one, a 1965 model in black, again with its original M100 6.3 litre engine, was also a little unloved. Although shabby in appearance, after a couple of days flattening and polishing, the paintwork came up like a mirror finish. The main problem with this, although good mechanically, was the bank of 4 switches on the driver's door that worked the windows. These, purchased new by the previous owner, had been ruined by him putting ATF into the system instead of the correct hydraulic fluid, wrecking the seals and almost destroying the whole system. I sent this to Germany for €1,000 rebuild and did a lot of work to rectify before I was semi-happy. There's always leaks. Oh, and I had no brakes, so I replaced all the lines with steel along with the flexi hoses. What was also interesting about this car, it was previously owned by a dwarf who had the rear C-frame removed to lower it by 6 inches so his feet touched the floor. The car had vibration on acceleration and kind of made a knocking and juddering from underneath at the back of the transmission tunnel. So on further investigation, I could see that the main prop shaft or hop kiss joint had a few small tears and was well past its sell-by date. Probably from years of manoeuvring, reversing and accelerating this heavy beast. It was an education in itself, just trying to work out how to get the bloody thing off. Take a look at the original. It's like a work of art. I found this was no longer available, so I had a specialist company make this one up. The updated version. Much stronger and much more substantial. There you go. Good for a few more years. So I then got the car to a stage where it was usable, dependable, drivable. I cleaned up the interior within an inch of its life. I also cleaned up the engine bay and did a bit of detailing. I replaced all the belts and all the fluids so it was clean and maintainable. It really did look the part. I decided to take it to a few shows in the northwest of England, where it caused a lot of fuss, being rare and unusual and very stately. I also won a couple of Mickey Mouse prizes, which was nice. It even featured in a magazine article for the Mercedes-Benz driver. I took it on many long journeys, and I had an awful lot of fun in the car. Then on to the third one, which in my mind was by far the best of the bunch. Over the years, this car had been moved from barn to pillar to post, but even though it had been left out of the elements and was missing its front and rear screen, there was no rot. The bodywork was in fantastic condition. The paintwork was perfect, or near perfect, and the interior had been done in a beautiful grey leather. It looked a bit rough here, but it cleaned up beautifully. So first of all, I ordered a new front and rear screen from Mercedes-Benz, £1,800, which I thought was an absolute bargain, by the way, and all available and in stock. All the bright work was removed and sent off to be re-chromed. And I also ordered a complete new exhaust system for the left-hand side while I was there. I mean, look at the size of it, it's like 20 feet long. I lined up the pieces on the car, and after carefully marking them up in situ, I then removed them and carefully welded them together. And the fitment was crucial to prevent any knocking noises or vibration underneath the car while driving. The anti-roll bar bushes looked a bit worse for wear, so I replaced these along with the brake flexi hoses. Look at that, they're well past the sell-by date. And with that done, whilst underneath, I stripped and re-undersealed the arches and the floors to the correct MB Pablo beige. And at great expense, I managed to source an original set of two-piece wheel hubs. I know there's not much difference, but if you look closely there is, and I think you can't beat originality. The bright work arrived back from the chrome platers, and when fitted it really set off the blue metallic paint. I remember I had a real job with the huge sill covers. There was only one firm in the country with a bath big enough. Now the door mirrors were another story. I believe the car, though originally UK registered, had spent some time in Australia where its owner, for some unknown reason, had decided to fit a pair of rare electric coupe BMW mirrors. So after sourcing a pair of new originals from Car Middelhoff in the US, I set about to replace them. But what baffled me most was there were no holes for the originals, so I carefully had to measure out and cut them in. I did my repairs, and after matching up the paint, back to original. See, what was also unusual is there were no original holes in the door panels either, which were fiberglass, so I had to cut them in, fit the correct chrome bezels, and then this allows you to adjust the mirror from the inside of the car. The door panels were originally half leather and half velour, so we recovered these in grey leather to match the seats, and also a new set of carpets to complete the job. So as I probably explained, you have a pump which works the air suspension. When you start the engine, it builds up the pressure and it builds up the air in the system. If you've got leaks, you have to run your engine before your car will lift up to the proper height. It's one of them, you'll come out the next day and it'll basically be on its arse if you've got any leaks at all in the bags or the system itself. But the hydraulic system, this works your windows, your power windows, which you've got 2 speeds. You have a bank of switches on your driver's door which will work every window in the car. They were quite dangerous in the day. In 1963 it was quite an innovative invention, but I don't think they had safety in mind, because if you had your arm in the way, it literally cut your arm clean off. It also worked the boot on a switch. On the switch, it opens the boot, you push the switch, it closes the boot, and it slams pretty firmly. Again, if you got your arm in the way, you're asking for trouble. It also works like a fresh air flap, which is just in front of the windscreen, which on a switch on the dash will open and close. There's normally 2 switches in the front. One of them is normally a dummy switch, unless you have a sunroof, because it's being fitted basically in case the cars were made, to spec with a sunroof, to order, I should say. But basically these are the switches. They were phenomenal expense, and still are if you can get hold of them. I sent mine off to a guy called Wolfgang Will in Germany, and for €500, you get one rebuilt and sent back in the post a couple of weeks later, which, considering there's probably hundreds of these all over the car, You know, if you were going to rebuild one of these cars and do it properly, then you know, it's a big money. Yeah, these are the two new ones I had left over, but I'm sure I'll have another one in the future. Now, the pipes to the hydraulic system, if you see the shape of this on the end, it's kind of like a little teat with a shoulder on. And this would basically fit into here, snug with its sleeve, and then a pin would go through here like a horseshoe-shaped pin, and that would lock the pipe in. I had to replace a couple of these, and I just couldn't get hold of them at the time. So I decided to use my initiative and be a little bit enterprising, and had these made up by a machine shop, which allowed me to put it in my brake making kit, and I could actually replicate what Mercedes did with the pipes. And there was quite a few I needed to work on, as well as the seats are also worked by hydraulics, and you'll have like a hydraulic plunger in your doors, for your windows, under your seats, under your rear seats, which on a button would move forward and backwards. You could almost make it like into a bed. So it was pretty complicated, but I just worked off the premise, if you have a leak, fix it. And you'd no sooner fix a couple of leaks or replace a couple of pipes that had pinholes in, because they do leak a lot of hydraulic fluid into the doors, you'll find, or under the carpets. You know, you'd no sooner fix 2 or 3 of them, and then another couple of leaks would start up somewhere else. But, you know, all said and done, even so, what a car. I mean, it was so over-engineered, but what a beautiful car when you got it right. Not to say that I got it completely right, but in my ownership I replaced many rams and switches, and I endeavoured to bring the car up to the best possible standard. But beautiful as they are, they'll always be a work in progress. I managed to source, I was told, the last set of original Mercedes-Benz door seals available, which is a real plus, because if you use aftermarket seals, it's simple, the doors won't shut properly. I then moved on to the boxes of parts containing the tacho, the speedo, and lots of other dash bits. They all cleaned up really well. The jigsaw began, but whilst out, I decided to replace the ignition switch because it was intermittent. I sourced this from the Classic Centre while I was out in California. Cables and oil lines were reconnected, and over the next couple of days, the dash came together and began to take shape. Next was the wood, which after stripping I replenished with 12 coats of 2-pack lacquer, which were then baked in an oven at a paint shop up the road. Flattered and polished, they came up a treat. Out of the 3 cars, this was the only one that retained the original horn. This in itself was a work of art. Situated under the wheel arch, it was more like a ship's horn than a car horn. And just when I thought I was finished with the hydraulics, the automatic handbrake was also a work of art. You know, when you put the car into park, it's freaky to see the pedal operate on its own. And when you go into drive again, it comes up like a ghost operating. Commonplace nowadays on most modern cars, but back in its day it was real state-of-the-art stuff. The hydraulics on the rear seat also needed addressing. So with new rams and new switches fitted, and another couple of £1,000 later, all was sorted. And that rear seat, which looked a little worse for wear, was stripped, repainted with a vinyl coat, fed, and came up like new. The original jack was a nice piece of kit, and when inserted into its jacking point in the sill, it could lift the entire car up one side, even though it was a couple of tons in weight. This came complete with its own unique wooden handle. The alternator was shot. And if you look at how complicated the copper rosette is, it would have cost me a fortune to get it rebuilt. You know what? I ended up going to Mercedes and getting a brand new one for a couple of £100. Bargain. The steering box was piss and fluid everywhere. And I was only able to acquire 3/4 of the seals needed. That's all that was still available. Anyway, I did my best with what I could get, and it seemed to do the trick. Although it fell off at one point and smashed me in the face, giving me 2 black eyes. The rocker covers came off. I did the tappets, I did a full service on the engine, new belts. I even made a top tray for the battery from scratch as the original one was missing. And look at that. What a car. A car so beautiful, yet so flawed they even included a toolkit in the boot with new hydraulic switches and wooden pegs in case the windows collapsed. Not that you ever saw one broken down at the side of the road. You see, as legend has it, any problems and two Mercedes technicians would appear from nowhere with a toolkit and erect a tent around it. I suppose you get what you paid for with the best car in the world. The creme de la creme of German automobiles. So 3 years on, the car eventually passes to its new custodian, who picks up the baton and pledges to continue the car's journey and take it to that next level. So the question is, if the opportunity came along to own another of these majestic goddesses, despite their high maintenance, phenomenal costs and complicated mechanics, would I? You bet I would. Thank you for watching this episode of Gary Mavers Classic Obsession. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and join me next time when I continue to pay homage to the finest Mercedes-Benz ever built and speak to David Atkinson as we take the legendary 600 for a drive.